Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on down.
Mets fans, welcome back to another Mets Roundtable Podcast right here on all of our channels. How is everybody doing today on this lovely Monday? If you're in New York, it's a shit show with the rain, and everywhere else where you are, hopefully you're enjoying, I guess, the rest of the baseball season, and it is football 100% all over the country, but we are here to talk about our beloved Mets and this disastrous 2023 season. We're going to say what up to everybody since it's been a couple of weeks, since Labor Day happened and football season. We thought we'd give the Mets a chance to put them on the back burner since they decided to embarrass themselves this season. So we're going to say what up to everybody on the roundtable. Hayden, how you doing, buddy? What is up?
Hopefully everyone is going well. I am most certainly doing well. I want to apologize. I know I haven't uploaded. I've been very inactive on the channel the last 2 weeks. I recently lost my voice, but that's besides the point. Otherwise, I'm doing well. I've just been extremely busy. A lot of things with work. I'm back at school, of course, DeGrom University, as you guys like to call it. So I'm back. Already mentally checked out 1 month in. So just kind of grinding with that. But yeah, I know football season started. I'm a big Buffalo Bills fan. So I've been watching a lot of the Bills lately, partially why I don't have a voice today. But, Mets are I'm just waiting for the season to be over and talk about free agency. And I think we got some decent stuff to go over. It is pouring out here in Florida now. I don't know if you guys could hear the rain. I'm sitting right by the window. But, yeah, it's the same thing down here. But, I appreciate everyone for tuning in, and definitely good to be back with all y'all.
Absolutely. All right. Chris, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
What up, everyone? Always good to be back on another roundtable. I know the topics have been a little bit hard to come by recently, so doing some work over on my channel, football season, got some sports betting content up there, got a whole bunch of new stuff, Feeling Blue podcast for the Giants. I know the Giants haven't been doing too swell, but hopefully that turns around here shortly. But yeah, no, it's all good. Like Hayden said, can't wait to get into the off season, talk David Stearns, trades. I bet you there's gonna be trades, a bunch of signings. So happy to get into it. We just got to get over this past week, or this next week, I should say. But good to be back. Can't wait for these topics. And yeah, man, always good to be back on.
All right. And Nelson with the Knicks shirt. What's up?
What up? I'm just here so I don't get fined. Looking forward to the end of this season. Just gonna go ahead and get the obligatory. If you haven't yet, please pop over, subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested, tomorrow I will be at the Binghamton Rumble Ponies Eastern League Championship game. Depending on if they win tonight, they could be able to clinch it. So check out the content for that. I'll be posting a lot of that. So appreciate you guys doing this, and appreciate you having me on. And look, let's get into some topics here.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So we're around the round table. It's been a while, guys. So make sure you hit on that like button, hit on that subscribe button, all of our channels. And we're going to get started right away with the home and road records for this damn team. And it is embarrassing to say the least. There is 6 more games at home to end the season against the Marlins and the Phillies. The home record is okay. A couple of games over 500 might be better, might be worse. We'll see what happens at the end of the season. But you see the record right there, 32-59 on the road. And you know what? It all started in like the middle of May into June, where this team spiraled out of control. And 32-59 is absolutely embarrassing. That shouldn't have happened. That's not a playoff team. That's not a good team. And we had our team basically healthy for the most part for most of the season, at least before the deadline came up. Scherzer had his issues. Verlander was out a month, but the core and the lineup, for the most part, besides Marte, who played injured most of the year, they have been pretty healthy. And to have 32-59 record on the road is just embarrassing. And as you see, 39-36 on at home, which could be better or worse depending on what happens in the next 6 games of the season. But I'm going to start with you, Hayden. I mean, that record's embarrassing. That is not a playoff team. That is not a very good team. And, I don't know what you take from it on the road. Is it, what was it on the road that made them so bad? What do you think it is?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not really this person that's crazy about home field advantage, but maybe that could be a part of it. I think one observation that could be taken to, and this is a small observation, but, we saw how this team is incapable of scoring runs in the first inning. Obviously, we would see them not, immediately they're away. 1, 2, 3, they're sat down, and then a team like the Phillies or whatever, Braves, whatever, would immediately score on in the first inning. So I don't know. I mean, being honest, I think it's just a really weird coincidence. I mean, we saw in May, in June, when this team really collapsed. I believe they had a lot of away games. I believe they had more away games than home games in the months of May and June. And that's when we really saw them, the Mets face their Waterloo. And that's when they just would go on and just lose series after series after series after series. And it's, predominantly from those months. Like I said, I think it's really no wrong or right answer. I guess it's just couldn't perform on the road. We would see them. Examples, getting swept in Kansas City. It's ironic because this team has very good numbers when it comes to going in extra innings. I think this team this year I could be completely wrong. If someone wants to correct me, please do. But I think this team was like, I think they were let's say they hypothetically, let's say they were in extra innings 10 times this year. I know that's not the case, but they were probably like 8-2. If we're kind of going off of that, they were very good in extra innings, but I don't really know why that's the case. I mean, you look at the road record, and that's an embarrassment. The home record's a little bit better, obviously. They played more games on the road as of right now, but that'll probably equal out after next week. But embarrassing. I mean, when you go to Kansas City, you get swept. And just the inability to win on the road. I mean, we saw, and it was in May and June, this team just couldn't win on the road, and I think a lot of it is because of that. But it kind of just coincides with how this has just been a horrible season. As I say, I'm checked out. I mean, these players have been checked out since day one, so it's unfortunate. But maybe if there's going to be one positive, just finish with a good win-loss record at home. That's the only thing they could do right as of now.
Yeah. So, Chris, what do you think the recipe was for being so bad on the road? Do you have any ideas of why they were so bad?
I don't even think that it comes down to like the roster construction, to be honest with you. There was plenty of veterans to go ahead and I guess level out the playing field. I mean, you have the rookies coming up eventually when they did. You got Kodai Senga, who's trying to make that adjustment, especially to the road ballparks as well. I mean, even Citi Field just coming over from the Japanese league. But no, I don't really think that there's any sort of answers as to why there's not like a mathematical equation to say, oh, this is why the Mets were so horrid on the road this season. It was actually a complete shock to me. I think that they would have had a better road record with the veterans that they had on this team. At the start, but it is what it is. Like I said, we're all checked out. Let's just be honest with you. We're all checked out. The players have been checked out. just like Hayden says. So we'll see. Get some, I guess I don't know if we'll get into the offseason in this episode or not, but just get some competent guys in the rotation, fill out the rotation spots, maybe give you some more length, like Hayden said was lacking. A lot of games were close, bullpen. Just giving up the lead more often than not, especially the early guys in the bullpen, which is just not a recipe for success at wherever you're playing, if you're at home or on the road. So that's all I really got on it. I don't really think that this is sort of a trend that can be explained, to be honest. It's just like unexplanatory phenomenon, to be honest with you. So we'll see. But just got the notification Drew Gilbert hit a 3-run home run in game 1 of the championship series. So shout out Drew Gilbert. He's been killing it in the minor leagues. But no, that's all I got on the home road. I don't think there's anything else to be said about that.
Yeah. So Nelson, what do you got about this road record that is embarrassing to look at?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to pinpoint what it would be. Like, obviously, most teams do play better at home, but not this much of a discrepancy. That's a lot. Only thing I can say is that early in the season, they did play a lot more away games, and they were really bad earlier in the season. They didn't start kind of playing better till after the trade deadline. So, and I think then the schedule started evening out a little bit to the point where they were playing more home games. So maybe that played a little bit of a part in it, but yeah, it doesn't make too much sense. It's not like they had some rookies, but they don't have a ton of rookies to where you could blame it on rookies that aren't comfortable playing on the road or whatever, stuff like that. So I don't know. Who knows? I just know I'm glad that the season's about to end, and hopefully next year this isn't what we're talking about in September.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. It's hard to pinpoint anything. That's why I wanted to bring it up, the record, especially the road record, because of the fact that, like, it's nothing really to pinpoint. I mean, I was in Miami tailgating on opening day when we heard the news about 2 hours before the game that Verlander is not pitching on opening day, and then you find out exactly why and how long he's going to miss, and it started to trickle down. And that was only a few weeks before or after Diaz went down in the WBC. So it was it started out bad in spring training with the Diaz injury, and then opening day with the Verlander, and then not even a couple of weeks later with the Scherzer sticky stuff and the sweat and rosin, and it was just trickle down. And it seemed like it just overflowed with nonsense and crap from day one. And I think nothing went right for this team all year. You know what? When the offense was looking a little bit better, the pitching sucked. When the pitching was looking a little bit better, the offense sucked. And and then the manager decisions and the coaching mishaps, and it's just everything in general, I think, caused this team to have the record they have overall. And of course, the 27 games under 500 road record that they're going to have for the 2023 season. So with that said, leads to negativity in the clubhouse, quote unquote, negativity on players getting traded and having something to say about the Mets. And only recently, Tommy Pham came out and said this is the worst set of position players, least work hard position players he's ever seen in his career. And I laughed at that comment because of the fact that he also added that Lindor, Alonso, and Nimmo are the hardest workers. Seem like they are the hardest workers, and McNeil was not a part of that. And I know me and Nelson in general probably smiled when we didn't see his name on there, because it is the weirdest thing, because he looks like he's the hardest working player in the world when you see him throwing his bat, cursing on the field and everything like that. But and then also Lindor came out and commented on that as well, and his quote came out about saying that thank Tommy Pham about him, working hard again and, figuring out how to work hard again. And, it's hard to kill Lindor on his numbers, just like it's very hard to kill Alonso on his numbers. So the Tommy Pham comments, I laughed at them. I don't think it means as much as you think. I mean, we all knew there was something going on in the clubhouse, no matter who it was or who the problem is. We heard about Verlander being a prima donna and, being full of himself, and Scherzer just being Scherzer, And who knows what's really wrong with this? But I'm gonna start with you, Hayden, with the comments about Tommy Pham. I'm not shocked that the three guys he mentioned worked the hardest are the three guys that are part of the core four, not including McNeil. So, what do you think about the Tommy Pham comments? When you first heard about him, what was your instant reaction?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's vague, but honestly, my initial response is okay, cool. This is New York. It's a big market city.
Yep.
Both New York teams are not playing well. It's September. Both New York teams are not going to be in the playoffs. If you're a reporter, a journalist, a beat writer, whatever, what are you going to talk about? I just, New York is one of the biggest journal cities out there. It's not like you're playing in Cleveland. You're not playing in Colorado. I mean, stuff trends. And it's interesting that, Tommy Pham, who I guess is deemed not the best clubhouse guy by a lot of people. He's had a lot of shenanigans in the past with opposing teammates and his own teammates. But, I don't know. I don't know how much of a reliable source Tommy Pham is. Keep in mind, he's had his fair share of issues in Cincinnati and Tampa and San Diego. We know the whole fantasy football incident with Jock Peterson. But, I don't know. There's really not – it's kind of hard to make something. Obviously, every team has their clubhouse issues. I think it just depends on, who it is and where it is. Obviously, when you're a team that's not playing well, you're going to have clubhouse issues. That's just how it goes. I wouldn't be surprised if December 13th at 12:30 p.m. an article comes out that there was an altercation after the Mets and Phillies game. I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, that's just how it goes. You could tell that, this team was checked out day one. They didn't care. Lindor brought this point up, and I really concurred with it, was that this team never really had a unifying moment. Yes, this was a very similar roster to last year. But you looked at last year, and what was the main difference? In the beginning of their season last year, first week against the Nationals, they had that benches clearing brawl when Lindor got hit. Later that month, they had the benches clearing brawl against the St. Louis Cardinals. There was a unifying moment where they all said, hey, we got your back. Lindor, I got your back. Alonso, I got your back. Whoever it was. You see him this year. I mean, Alonso's getting hit left and right, and everyone just sits there. This team is checked out. They don't care. They have no heart, no hustle. I'm not trying to sound like Frank the Tank, but it's true. They don't care. I mean, a player could probably get drilled in the head, and they just sit there, and that's what they do. But, of course there's clubhouse issues. Think about it. 2021, this team played bad. I mean, you had so much stuff going on. Baez and Lindor, the thumbs down. So much just the team was completely divided, with guys like Stroman. And then you look at last year, they played well. There was nothing really reported of. So who knows? I mean, listen, I respect these players to an extent. They go out there, but, I don't really know what to make of it. Obviously just because he named those players doesn't mean everyone else isn't. And I guess when it comes to the topic of McNeil, at least he shows emotion. At least it shows he cares. I mean, I see Daniel Vogelback. These guys are hitting routine ground balls and they just sit there. At least McNeil shows effort. And hey, you can make the argument, okay, he's coming, he's performing when there's no pressure. He didn't do it in 2021. He never came back towards the end of 2021 when the season was over. Look at some of the players now. They're not doing great. So, at least McNeil can show. Talking about McNeil personally, I just think it was a really long slump, just to put it that way. I think definitely factors of the shift and, pulling the ball. That definitely, was a big part of it. Launch angle swing was another thing too. But, I don't really think it means like guys like McNeil and Marte and Vogelback and I guess whoever else does. I don't think just because they weren't on the list doesn't mean they're hardworking players. I think everyone's a hardworking player in their own in their own ways. McNeil's played 155 out of the 156 games. If he was that lazy and didn't care, he'd say, don't put me in the lineup. He's arguably done more than a decent amount of these guys in this roster. So I don't know. Mets fans, a player doesn't produce for a week and then they want him DFA. That's just how a lot of Mets fans are. But I don't really know what to make of it. Honestly, that's really all I got. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear some bull crap in December, how there was a brawl or someone got punched or
Yeah.
Who knows at this rate?
Yeah, I agree. And look, I'm not the biggest McNeil fan. Everybody knows that, but I don't think he's not a hard worker. Sometimes I don't like his antics. I think after every out he makes to go crazy like that sometimes is a little much. But I don't think he's not a hard worker. I just I don't. I mean, I think we could all agree that we wouldn't see Tommy Pham and Jeff McNeil having a beer together. They seem like their personalities just don't click at all, and they seem like
Very right. Yes, I agree.
yeah, they seem like they don't have the personalities to be friends. Like they just wouldn't, they rub each other the wrong way, it seems. And you made a great point, Hayden, about, there was never a unifying moment with this team. And that's a great point. I didn't even think of that, but that's a great point. And yeah, I mean, if you really go back and you made me think about it, yeah, there hasn't been any. And there was, like you said, the first week of the season with the Nationals, it happened right away. So unfortunately, that's how it goes. When you have a bad season, negativity follows through the media, through leaks in the clubhouse, possibly, or just upper management, or just the organization in general. So I think Nelson fell off, but that's okay. He'll pop back up. So Chris, what do you think about the Tommy Pham comments when you first heard it? Your instant reaction?
First, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, cool. Um, I it's hard. It's hard because when we said it on Interstate with Nelson and I don't really want to speculate on who he was talking about. Obviously, with regards to these comments, you can toss away those three names. Obviously, like he had respect for it, and it kind of leaves you wondering who he's really talking about. You can say Marte, McNeil, maybe some of the earlier guys that got traded at the deadline as well. I mean, I find it really hard to believe Escobar or Cano fit under that category. So it was kind of interesting to me. It was kind of shocking, especially the time period of it all. I thought he would have come out with comments a little closer to when he actually got traded. So it was kind of shocking that it came out as late as it did. But, like Hayden said, to his point, this is New York. I've been saying it for months now that I think that there's going to be some sort of story written, whether it's by Heyman, whether it's by Martino, doesn't matter who it's by, that something happened to alter the course of the season in terms of the team morale. I've been saying that. I said it multiple times. I could just see that happening. But you know what? It doesn't really matter now. It's us just fans and us, I guess, us as content creators and just talking about the Mets as we're talking about it just because we're grasping onto straws for topics right now. To be honest with you, what's done is done in terms of the Mets moving forward. If the Mets really do have an issue with the clubhouse moving forward, Steve Cohen probably already knows about it. And he's going to address this in the offseason. So, you know, if Tommy Pham is correct, then you'll see the proper moves to remove the guys that he was talking about in this offseason. And if that is McNeil, right? And I think that a lot of people may want to trade McNeil, but it's not likely to happen. If McNeil gets moved, then we can be like, oh, maybe there was some truth to Tommy Pham's comments. You know what I mean? By process of elimination. So I don't know. I don't know how it plays out. Marte's been dealing with this injury pretty much from the start of the season. I think we all knew since the beginning that he hasn't been himself. You got the rookies coming up. First season, Beatty, Alvarez, Vientos. It's kind of weird to sort of like say that when this team has like three, rookies that he was playing with alongside for most of the season. So it's just kind of a weird topic, to be honest with you. Do I think that he's full of crap? I don't think he's full of crap because I think Tommy Pham does keep it real. He's been around multiple organizations. He is a solidified veteran. He was a guy who I was actually open to bringing back if the stars aligned because he did single-handedly carry the Mets on his back when they needed him to carry them the most. Really, he was the best hitter for about a month and a half for the Mets, maybe a little bit less. So I don't think that he's totally full of crap. Maybe he's exaggerating just a little bit, but I'm not going to say that I'm discrediting him. I think he has some validity. I just don't want to speculate on who he was talking about. With that being said, though, he definitely shot himself in the foot in terms of ever coming back to the New York Mets. That is long out the window now. So he's not going to be a bench bat moving forward for us where I really was open to bringing him back. But you know what? It is what it is. I hope that, as we get into these next topics with Buck and Stearns, I just hope the overall morale with this team just changes. And you even saw with the trade deadline comments. You saw it with Brandon Nimmo, who is sort of questioning the front office of why they were trading these guys away. You saw it with Scherzer, who wasn't happy when David Robertson got traded. And I get those guys because those guys want to win, but at the same time, you need to be able to trust your front office. You need to be able to trust the owner and everything that they're doing. So I really hope that the morale changes. I hope that Steve Cohen this offseason does everything. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter who's the guy that doesn't want to be there or is causing issues behind the scenes. That's not for us to know. That's only for them to know. But in turn, we will know by the moves that happen this offseason. So that's all I got. I'll say glass half full, half empty with the Tommy Pham comments. I believe it's a little exaggerated, but I also don't think that he's not totally dishonest in what he's saying. You know what I mean? I find that hard to believe. He just come out of left field, 1 month after he got traded to just pull that out randomly.
I think you're muted.
Yeah, you're on mute, Rob.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and you're right. You hear me, guys, right? Okay, sorry. Yeah, and you're right about that, Chris. About him, he burned that bridge coming back to the Mets because I think a lot, like you said, he carried us for a month and a half when nobody was hitting. And if you look at the month of June, he was the only one hitting. I mean, when Lindor and Alonso and McNeil were batting, 200 and not doing their job as the core of the team, Tommy Pham was the one that was, keeping us in ball games, making good catches defensively. So, yeah, you're right. So, Nelson, what do you think about the Tommy Pham comments?
Yeah, I mean, this is what happens when teams have losing seasons, especially in New York. Like, Hayden is right. Writers are going to look for something to write about, and they're going to look for something negative to write about because that's going to get them more eyeballs. As far as the timing of the comments, I think that's why it came out this late, because it's getting late in the season. They got nothing to write about. They probably called them up or saw him at some point. Like, yo, can we get your thoughts on what went wrong with the Mets? And he, being who he is, said what he had to say because he's not one to keep his mouth shut. The Mets got rid of quite a few guys that don't like to keep their mouth shut, apparently. Scherzer being one of them. So, yeah, and to the point is, like, if you read the article, like, if you're looking for a moment that derailed the Mets season, it came before the season even started. It was when Edwin Diaz went down in the WBC. It's hard to say a closer is the heart and soul of a baseball team, but that moment and the way the team reacted after that moment kind of proves that he had a lot to do with the success of this team last year. The bullpen obviously was atrocious without him. It screwed up everybody down the line. Like, Robertson ended up having to close. Ottavino ends up having to be the setup man. It messed up that whole situation. And just things after that just kind of steamrolled and got worse and worse and worse. And, I mean, I'm not saying that was the only thing that made the season go, but I think it did mess with their psyche a little bit in the beginning, and they were never ever able to bounce back. And we are where we are because of it. I'm glad he's not. I'm glad he didn't come back to pitch. I'll throw that in there. But I hope he's back next season healthy, and we'll see how things go with Stearns finally being at the helm.
Yep. Yeah, buddy.
One thing that I would like to say. So when it comes to Jeff McNeil, I have to go this route. As Rob knows, and everyone can attest, I am one of the biggest Jeff McNeil fans since I started my channel. I don't know who said it, but I think it was thrown around of could Jeff McNeil, be that controversial guy, and if so, he would go in the offseason. I guess just I kind of want to debunk the theory of whether McNeil's the issue or not. Jeff McNeil has been with this organization since 2018. Why is it now that he would be a clubhouse issue? I never heard anything in 18, nothing in 19, nothing in 20, never heard anything in 2021, and that's when he had his worst season by far, and nothing last year. Why would it be now that he's the clubhouse issue? I get it. There's some new faces in town. But I mean, I go on Instagram. I see Alonso and McNeil doing stuff with their wives, or I know they were very close with J.D. Davis, but I don't know. I just wanted to question that. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't really get why now would there be all this clubhouse issues. You know, everyone says, "Oh, it's Alonso. Oh, it's McNeil." They've been with this organization for 5 years. I've never heard of them being a clubhouse issue till now. I mean, why? You know, why would people be claiming? If anything, you think it's the new guys. You would think it's Lindor. Not saying it is, but you would think it's someone like Lindor, like Marte, someone new. Because I mean, we've never heard. 2019. That was 4 or 5 years ago. I've never heard anything about them. Being an issue. And they don't really seem like it. They seem like they're all very, they care about this team. But
Yeah, I think everybody said in their comments and their opinions, it's media. I think it's all media driven, just like the Alonso stuff, where they took the Brewers and the Cubs calling the Mets about Alonso, and the media flipped it and put headlines saying, "Oh, the Mets were willing to trade Pete Alonso." That was never the case, and I think the media was driven on that. And again, when you're having a bad season and there's nothing to talk about in the New York media, Hayden, you brought it up. When there's nothing to talk about in the New York media, how do you get clicks? How do you get people to read your articles, negative articles about prominent players? That's how it works. And I think that's what it mostly was. Now, again, is there some truth to that? Well, like everybody said, we'll know in the offseason when if McNeil is the one getting traded, the organization felt like McNeil was the problem. Right? I don't think you could trade Lindor. Yes, you can probably trade Alonso with his 1 year left on his deal. But, I don't think those guys are the issue. I really think the media makes it more than what it is. They need stories. So they're going to, who do you talk about? Alonso. Obviously, that's a trigger. That is a pulse of the Met fans where, oh, how can you get Met fans to react? Oh, talk about Pete Alonso. Talk about Jeff McNeil, a fan favorite, Brandon Nimmo. I don't think anybody thinks Brandon Nimmo is the problem. He's always smiling, So, I mean, who is it? If it's the young kids, like, I don't know who brought that up, but if it is the Beatties or the Vientos or the Alvarezes of the world, that's even worse. I'd rather not have that. I'd rather have Jeff McNeil the problem than having the young kids the problem, because if the young kids are the ones not working hard, because he said position players, that's worrisome, because you look at Beatty's season, not very good. Is he not the one working hard, thinking that, because of his minor league numbers, he got up here and, hey, look at me, I'm the man. And then he showed that he wasn't the man. I wonder if it's the young kids, but who knows? I think it's more media driven than anything else. I think, again, Nelson said, if you read the article about Tommy Pham, it really wasn't, the headline made it worse than it actually was, in my opinion. So, if the core guys are the ones that are really working hard, and maybe Tommy Pham and McNeil just didn't have a very good relationship, and Pham just didn't want to put him in there because he didn't like him. That probably could have been the case, because Jeff McNeil, he plays every day. He plays 100 positions. I think it's hard to think that he's the one that doesn't work hard. So we're going to go with the new era of the Mets organization. That is David Stearns. It is the worst kept secret in baseball. We all knew that he was going to be the president of baseball operations. We know there was a little bit of interest with the Houston Astros, and I didn't think that was going to happen. I always thought David Stearns was going to be the president of baseball operations until it was actually official. And he can't start until, I believe, October 2nd, after the season is over, is officially when he can take over. And I would not be shocked if on October 2nd, the day before the postseason starts, he comes out with a statement or something, or make a move to, like management or coaching wise, to show his stamp on this team and this organization, saying, hey, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I will do whatever I can to make this team a championship caliber team from the top to bottom. And we're going to start with Nelson right away with David Stearns. What do you think he brings to the table? I mean, in my opinion, he brings, we know what he brings. You see it with the Brewers, analytics and power. That's what he brings to the Brewers. They're not very high average team, but they're a power hitting team with analytics. And listen, they're winning the Central. The Central's not very good, but they're winning the Central. They're making the playoffs. They make the playoffs, seems like almost every year. And that's something that the Mets do not do. So, Nelson, what are your thoughts about David Stearns and your opinion about what he's going to bring to the table for the Mets?
Well, you said it. He's a guy that, he brings a winning culture. Let's face it. No, the Brewers haven't won a World Series, but the Brewers have made the playoffs practically every year he was at the helm. And he pretty much built this year's team, too. He was just an advisor this year, but he built the team. So you got to give him credit for that as well. He likes, like you said, to build teams around power and pitching. And the Mets' history is when we're at our best is when our pitching is dominant. So hopefully he can get our pitching in order and get a lot of Brewers have found a lot of bullpen arms that have become very good. So if he can do that with the Mets, that would be great because our bullpen has sucked. I'm very excited to see what he can do. He's never had a payroll like the Mets, like he's going to have with the Mets. He's got a farm system to work with. He's got chips in the majors to work with. He can move pieces around. So he's not coming in with a bare, like scraping the bottom of the barrel. He's got the coffers are full. He can figure things out. He's got moves he can make. Whether he decides to flip the coaching staff around or whatever, we'll see. Yeah, I'm excited. I think I know some people are like hesitant to get too pumped up about it. I get it. I understand that. But if I look at his track record and I'm objective about it, like the guy's done a good job. I don't see how you could say he hasn't. Yeah, obviously he's had some moves that weren't great. Every GM does. It's not like anybody's doesn't make bad moves here and there.
Yeah.
Their farm system is very good as well too. So he built that up as well. So like these are all things that are positives to me with David Stearns. So I look forward to it. I look forward to him hitting the ground running. I'm glad that they were able to figure this out. And like you said, this wasn't a secret. The Mets have wanted him for 2-3 years now. They tried to get permission to talk to him, and their owner refused. Everybody that wrote anything about it said that he was very interested in coming to the Mets. He has ties to us from his past. He was an intern here. He was a Mets fan growing up. He's from New York. Like the stars are all kind of aligned there. Now we have 2 Mets fans at the helm with Cohen and Stearns. We'll see what Epler does if he's. I find it hard to believe he's going to be too heavy in the like decision making. I mean, he'll be in the room talking, but I think Stearns has the final call on everything pretty much. We can pretty much send Epler to Japan and let him hang out there, talk to the Japanese guys, figure all that out. So yeah, I'm excited, man.
Yeah, absolutely. David Stearns, we got another Met fan on the helm and running the team. And yeah, Billy Epler is going to get his coffee every morning. I mean, that's important, keep him awake, keep him on the phones doing the job. So, Chris, what do you think about David Stearns? What do you think he's going to bring to the table? And I think it's hard to say. You probably like the move, obviously. So what do you think about Stearns and your opinion about what do you think he can bring to this organization?
He brings, like Nelson said it perfectly. He brings a winning culture because he's a proven winner in Milwaukee. And I don't judge winners at the front office level by how many World Series teams they put together, because that's just, if you're looking at that, then I'm sorry, you're never going to be satisfied, because a proven World Series winner at the front office level rarely presents itself like the way David Stearns does right now. He brought the Brewers organization to 5 straight playoff appearances. Their first time, I've been saying this is the first time they've done it in their entire history being in the league. And he brings stability, and that stability was clearly lacking this season. Like it's one thing to like I would have said the stability piece with anybody that the Mets brought on, and more power to you guys. You guys said that this is the worst kept secret. I was still waiting for the Met and just have this deal fall through, and David Stearns not to be the next president of baseball operations. Thank goodness we're here reporting and talking about him taking over here in the next week or so when he's allowed to do so after the season. But yeah, absolutely phenomenal move. I like it. Shout out Omar Minaya. He wanted to retain him, but the Wilpons did not make that happen, obviously. Minaya wanted to retain him from an intern level to a little bit more of a prominent role when he was here. But we finally got David Stearns. I think that, it's a great move. I'm curious to see what's going to happen because he does have a lot of moves to make. Like Nelson just said, he has a plethora, almost an excess amount of assets that he now has to delegate. Whether this is like, especially the guys in the minor leagues right now with the infinite amount of infielders, like who is making, I'm not sure if this is called directly or not, but who's switching positions, who's going to be on the trade block because you can't keep 40, as Stevie said, 40, 50 shortstops in your organization. You just can't have that, especially when Lindor is your future shortstop for the foreseeable future. Like, you can't have that. So he's going to be in charge of all that. Now, also the veterans. You look at Marte, McNeil, and I know a lot of people don't want to get rid of McNeil, and I understand that completely 100%, but it's like you're going to have to build a team in the next 2 to 3 years, a perfect mesh of young talent and veteran presence. And the fine line between those two aspects, the young talent and the veteran presence, that is going to be completely on him to decide how much youth do I really trust in building a contender with versus how much veterans I want to build a contender with. And I think that's the beauty and the art of how the Mets set him up for success. Because now we're going to be able to look at this objectively in 2 to 3 years and say, wow, David Stearns really screwed that up. He let so and so XYZ go and they went on to be who they were versus, oh man, he nailed it. This guy, like the Mets are exactly where they wanted to be when they traded those guys and they had that haul in the 2023 trade at the 2023 trade deadline. So I think that it's beautiful. He has his work cut out for him, but man, this is something that if this does not excite you as a Mets fan, I have no idea what you. I don't know how you fan. I'm not here to fan police anybody, but this is something that excites me, and I think that it should excite pretty much, if you root for the Mets and you really want to see them win, this should excite you. So I'm on board with it, and he's got a lot of decisions to make. But I agree with you, Rob Nelson. You said on one of our Interstate Mets Report episodes that he is going to, as soon as he gets in here, whether it's via a move, I don't think he's going to make it. There's no player moves that he can make, obviously, when he first takes over, but at least interorganizationally appointing internally his staff and who gets promoted to what. That is going to be one of the things that he's going to come in here and do right away to assert his dominance and say and put the league on notice and be like, they hired me for a reason. This is the New York market. I'm here to tell the league that they are in trouble with what the Mets are giving me. Now I have Steve Cohen's pockets. We just got a trade haul. Watch what I can do as a GM. You're telling me that I never won in Milwaukee. Now let's see who's going to be laughing now. So I really think that's the David Stearns mentality that we're going to see. And man, I don't know the guy personally. I haven't been following him in his career, obviously, far too often. But if we can really see that sort of like go get it mentality from the front down, I really think that trickles down to the roster and any sort of roster whatever clubhouse issues that you saw or that it's being reported this season. I think that David Stearns, by example and by what he does in his role, can trickle down into the clubhouse because you want these guys on board. Like I said, what I just said in the last topic, you want these guys on board with what the front office guys are doing, what your owner's doing, because if those guys care, your players more often than not are going to care, right? So I think that's great, man. I think it's fantastic, and I'm happy that he's going to be here and taking over at the helm and providing that stability, and that's what I got.
Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds good. Hopefully, he is everything we want him to be. And listen, he, like you said, he's coming in with a full farm system. He has all these pieces to do what he wants with them. If he wants to keep them, he wants to trade them, because everybody can't play. we all know about that, right? Everybody can't play, so somebody's got to get moved here. If it's the major league part of the roster or a couple of the prospects, a couple of pieces have to go. And I'll talk about it later about when we get to the pitching part. But I mean, everybody, you can't have 13, 14 players on the field. So it's going to be very interesting to see what he's going to do and what he actually likes going forward. So Hayden, what do you think about the David Stearns era beginning in about a week or so? What do you think he's really going to bring to the table? I know you're very analytical, so I'm assuming you're going to like what he's going to do analytically. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, David Stearns coming to the Mets, I'm not shocked. I mean, if anything, I probably would have been shocked if he didn't come to the Mets. But Yeah, I agree with what, all y'all said and, the general consensus about David Stearns. I mean, he has a resume in Milwaukee in the industry. And you know what? Cohen waited, 3 years for a president of baseball operations. And, he said in his press conference in June or July or whenever it was, president of baseball operations don't grow on trees. They're hard to get. And he wanted to save his time and find the guy he wanted. And I mean, this is your guy. This is the guy that we waited 3 years for. So, I mean, not saying he better be the one, but I mean, you waited 3 years. So, obviously Epler will remain as the GM and David Stearns will be the president of baseball operations. So the two of them will kind of work together. Definitely good to see, what David Stearns, done. Obviously, everyone says, oh, the Brewers never won anything. Well, I mean, they've made the playoffs how many times versus how many times the Mets have. Keep in mind, David Stearns has had a very limited payroll in Milwaukee, as you guys stated. And I can only imagine what he would do with a big payroll. He's very analytical, which, I mean, is something that baseball is trending towards. And we know that this team is trying to go towards analytics. And I don't really see how they're doing that right now with some of the things that's going on. But I think Stearns can definitely help that. We know that Cohen wants to make this team analytical. He's trying to revamp and increase the analytics with this team. So I think Stearns could be a big factor to that. Like you said, Rob, Stearns, it's simply enough pitching and power hitting. And honestly, I mean, go after them all you want, but that's the mentality in baseball. I feel power wins championships. The small ball, unfortunately, doesn't work in 2023. Power is important, and we know that this team, has been getting better with power. I think this team definitely can get a little bit better. Yeah. So you add that, and then pitching. We know that the Mets, 2-3 years ago, were had one of the best rotations in baseball, and unfortunately, that's not the case for them anymore. So I'm hoping that Stearns could put them back to having one of the top 3, top 5 rotations in baseball. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes, obviously. Let's wait and see how the offseason goes. Like I said, if Stearns goes out there, he takes over, like October 1st or 2nd or whatever the date was, early October. If he goes out there and, extends Alonso and whatever other things, Yamamoto, whoever else is out there that he needs to extend or sign, and he has a good offseason, fans are going to be happy. Yeah. But, I don't want this team doing nothing in the offseason, not extending anyone or signing anyone or, helping the farm system. So I think it's going to be very important to see David Stearns. I think it is a new era. I'll admit I've been rough on Cohen, and, maybe the first 3 years it was kind of hard not having a president of baseball operations. And Cohen said that himself. Obviously, a lot of the GMs he had weren't the best people morally or just, even regards to their job as well. But you know what? I mean, you could say what you want about Epler, but like I said, luckily he will be having some power in this team, but I think not as much as he has had this past year. So, I think David Stearns' era is here. Let's ride.
Yep.
Can I just say something real quick? I see it, Jose in the comments. Whole thing of like David Stearns being this messiah for Mets fans. Like, bro, like I'm sorry. I need something to look forward to. I'm not saying he's gonna bring the Mets a championship in year one of this era, but like, come on, let's stop being miserable for one lousy second and let's start to build on some building blocks and let's see what the man can do. Like, we're not sitting up here and calling him a messiah. We're just saying with everything that he's done in his past and his career, with the resources that he's going to now have extra that he didn't have in Milwaukee, this is a recipe for success, and that's all the Mets can do. That's all Steve Cohen can do is put the Mets in a position and hire the right guys. And like, how many other guys would you have rather hired other than David Stearns? Like, let's be real. So, no, man, I just needed to address that because it's like I see that all the time on Twitter. It's like, David Stearns is not gonna come back and save the Mets. Like, why are we all hyping him up? Like, man, like, bro, like. I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm looking forward after this dud 2023 season. Like, you should too, but to each their own. I digress. I will stop talking now.
Thank you for bringing up Jose, because I was just going to bring it up as well as that annoying comment popped up. Listen, we're not bringing him up. We're not making him a messiah or anything like that. But one thing, like as a sports fan, there's one thing you always have going into an off season, going into a season is hope. If there's no hope, there's no sports. There's no sports fans. Like you can't go into the season and be like, who cares? We wouldn't have a channel. We wouldn't have a podcast. We wouldn't, be talking about the teams that we love if we didn't have hope. What's the point? And yes, Jose, we have, again, you don't listen. We know he has his work cut out for him, but it's something that, look, the Brewers did not want to get rid of him for a reason, right? They didn't want to give the Mets access earlier on because Stearns did so much for the organization in Milwaukee. Of course, the owner didn't want to get rid of him, right? I mean, it was the Tampa Bay Rays didn't want. I know Chaim Bloom got fired, but the Rays did not want to get rid of Chaim Bloom for a while. Finally, they did. So we know he has work to do. Obviously, we have work to do. We have a team that is not going to win 75 games most likely, right? We have no starters. We have no bullpen. I mean, at the very least, he has a core at the very least. So, yeah, he has work to do. But you have to put some trust in somebody. And this is probably the highly touted, a guy that knows what he's doing, that is respected around the league. And he's part of the New York Mets organization now. I mean, there's no more guys sending penis pictures or getting into having DUIs or anything like that the Mets had to deal with over the last couple of years, and we all know who we're talking about. And Billy Epler was like choice number 976 on the list, but he was the only one willing to take the job in such short notice with all this pressure. So now that David Stearns is here, he wants to be here. Go figure, a person who actually wants to be in New York and wants to be associated with the New York Mets. That's why we're excited, because he's a Met fan, which it really doesn't matter that he is, but it's a little bit better because we know that he has that emotional tie and that he does care. That's what matters. And I think that's why we're excited and hopeful. We're not saying he's a messiah. We're not putting him on a pedestal yet. But I tell you right now, if he brings the Mets a world championship, I tell you right now, I'll build a statue for him. Like that's how important a guy like this can be. He isn't yet. He can be a complete disaster. But let's see what he can do. But being a messiah, that's not where we're getting at. So, Hayden, you brought it up, right? Okay, perfect. You saw everything too. So, I'm thanking Chris to bring that up. Jose's comment up right away. But we're gonna get right into David Stearns, and right away there's gonna be talk as soon as he is official as the Mets president of baseball operations. Buck Showalter, who's been a hot topic all season, probably since June, is going to be a hot topic once again. So, Hayden, I'm going to start with you about Buck Showalter. Do you think he stays or goes, or do you think they're going to go elsewhere? We heard about Craig Counsell, but do you think I don't think Craig Counsell's managing after this season. At least he's going to take a year off. But if Craig Counsell isn't an option, is Buck going to stay or go? What is your thoughts?
I think it's tough right now with Buck. I mean, obviously, he's been here for 2 years, and it's been 50-50. You had last year, which was great. A lot of games were won because of Buck. A lot of the players say, oh, Buck told me to do this, or, I knew about this because of Buck. And then you look at this year and you say, who's this guy? Is this guy? I mean, this isn't Buck. I really couldn't tell you. I think right now, I think it's hard. I think when it comes to Cohen, I feel like Cohen has too much respect for Buck to fire him or let him go or release him or whatever other terminology they'd probably use. However, it's not Cohen's show at that level anymore. It's going to be David Stearns. And it's going to be if David Stearns and Epler, I guess, think Buck is the future. I wasn't aware that Counsell would take the year off. That's news to me, but I heard the rumors that if Stearns were to come to the Mets, then Counsell would come with him. A little side piece there, which I definitely can see. But I mean, if it's not Counsell, I really just don't see who else is out there. I mean, it's always the guy that's least expected. Think about it. It's always the guy that's least expected for the manager position or GM, whatever. I really don't know if the Mets were to release Buck. I know it's the last year on his 3-year contract. It's 3 years, right? Yeah. if it's not Craig Counsell, honestly, I don't see Buck leaving. I think he'd stay. I just don't see who else is out there, and if Cohen and this team would want to depart with him. So as of right now, this isn't what I want, but this is what I think is probably going to happen. Is he's probably going to stay. Do I agree with that? Not necessarily. I think that we need to go younger for Counsell. But I just if it's not Counsell, then I don't see who else it would be. So if he goes, I'd say Counsell, but otherwise, I think as of right now, he'll probably stay.
That's it. Chris, what's up? What do you got with that about Buck?
Yeah. I mean, we've said it on, like I said, Nelson and I have talked about Buck Showalter endlessly. I don't want him around, but I agree with you, Hayden. I think that he will play out his contract in that third year. And the only reason why I think that's the case, though, is that gives David Stearns, obviously you want David Stearns to, there's two sides of the story here. There's two sides of the fence, right? You want David Stearns to start off brand new, fresh start with the Mets, highly anticipatory. Like you want him to get his own guy, right? But on the other hand, you can also say like that year gives you a buffer year, right? Everything that the Mets have done since the trade deadline, all the news stories that come out, starting with the Scherzer comments, have basically alluded to the fact that the Mets are not going to be all in on 2024. Now, we can call that smoke. We can call that whatever we want to, right? That can be an internal discussion that they have. But right now, the way that they've made it seem to the media and to us fans is that maybe we'll go for the wild card. And I don't believe that. I think that the Mets are going to put a contender. As long as Steve Cohen's the owner, they're going to put a contender out there. But just call it for face value what it is and what we know so far. They are lowering the expectations like we all said. So why would you not let Buck Showalter ride out that contract? Give David Stearns that buffer year. Let everybody around the league know that, listen, Buck Showalter will be the manager in 2024. He will not be back under a new contract extension for the following season, and make that position known around the league that it's going to be open. Because, like Hayden said, who are you going to pivot to if Buck Showalter isn't the guy? Who are you comfortable giving a 3 to 4 year contract to managerial-wise that's not Craig Counsell? If it's not Buck Showalter, I can't name anybody. I'm not gonna lie to you. I can't name anybody who I'm comfortable with giving that contract to. A lot of people talk about Carlos Beltran. Nelson, you said it time and time again. Does Carlos Beltran even want to manage anymore after that whole debacle? Or is he comfortable in that advisory role that he's in right now? So that's why I'm saying maybe they keep this buffer year open to put the rest of the league on notice and let candidates come out the woodworks and say, hey, maybe I am up for the challenge. Maybe I am up for the challenge of going to New York, which goes back to David Stern's point. And why I'm so excited is that not everybody's going to look at that challenge and be like, oh, I want to go to New York. I want to be in that spotlight, and I want to take that team to the next step. Because guess what? It's high reward if you succeed. It's very high repercussions in terms of the media attention you get if you fail. So they have to get this next manager right. And I just don't think with the way that, this planning effort has gone, I think the Mets went about this trade deadline very sort of like last minute, and I'm happy they did. But you need time to let these things develop. And I don't know if it would be smart to rush in a new manager making such a rash decision in terms of picking up Buck Showalter's contract. So that's why I'm a proponent for letting him stay, to let that sort of let it play out how it does. And it may open some new doors and new opportunities to new names that we may not even be thinking of right now. But other than that, I don't feel comfortable with him in terms of being a manager, having these young guys come up. We have Jet Williams rising through the ranks right now. Like, we have Ronnie Mauricio, who, is pretty much he's off to a hot start, right? We have this young talent. Are we really comfortable letting a guy like Buck Showalter and all the tendencies that we've seen this year lead such a young group? I don't know if my answer is yes to that. My answer is definitely no. But I just think the way that this is all played out and how fast it's played out, I think that Buck Showalter does get that third year, that sort of buffer year for the Mets. So that's where I'm at with the Buck Showalter sort of third year.
All right, that sounds good. So Nelson, what do you got about Buck staying or going? What do you think about that?
Well, a few things. First off, I do not want Buck back at all. I think it's his time. He needs to go. Now, whether or not that happens, yeah, I mean, it does make some sense for Stearns to come in and maybe evaluate things himself for a year, but it may not even be his call. There's been reports that Buck isn't sure he wants to manage next year. Martino just said today it was 50-50 whether Buck stays or goes. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know if Buck's going to decide he wants to step down or if Stearns indeed says, I want my own guy. As far as the Council thing and Council being his guy, Heyman did say the other day that Council does maybe actually intend to manage next year. So if he does, and it's kind of going to be a fight with the Brewers, whether or not I'm sure they're going to want to keep him. I don't see why they wouldn't. But Stearns does have an inside track there. He's his guy. They worked together in Milwaukee all those years. Another name to watch out for is Pat Murphy. He's the bench coach for Council. Stearns knows him very well. He was actually a finalist the time, I think it was when Beltran got hired, he was a finalist for the job. The second time around, he wasn't. I think they might have talked to him, but Stearns, there's a report that Stearns was actually pushing for us to hire him, just trying to get his guy a job here. That obviously didn't work out that way. We ended up hiring Buck. So don't be so sure that Council is Stearns' only guy. He has another Milwaukee guy over there as the bench coach. So, and then obviously we have the internal candidate with Eric Chavez. We'll see about that. So there's going to be names out there if we do part ways with Buck. I'm ready to move on, like I said, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Chris was saying, I don't feel good about Buck with the young kids. He just doesn't seem like a manager that really vibes with the youth very well. And we have so many young kids coming up that I just think it's a recipe for disaster. But we'll see. We'll see if we decide to give him that last year. I definitely don't think he's going to be here beyond that. But
yeah,
we'll see what happens. But I'm on team Buck needs to go.
Yeah. So when it comes to Buck Showalter, can you blame him by himself as the problem for this year? He's part of it, that's for sure. The problem that I think David Stearns is going to run into about either not keeping Buck around or keeping Buck around is the fact that, say if he really wants Craig Counsell to be the manager of the New York Mets, and Counsell says, you know what, I am going to take the year off. Who's really going to take that job for 1 year, knowing that Stearns is going to hire Craig Counsell? Nobody's going to take that 1 year and say, all right, I'll do it for 1 year. Nobody's going to take that position unless you're going to, promote Eric Chavez or something, or Cora or something like that. Maybe they would take it for 1 year. But that's why I think Buck is probably going to get that 1 year. And I'm not necessarily happy with the fact that the way he's played around with the young players. I mean, maybe that will change, and maybe, they'll put their foot down, Stearns and Cohen, and say, listen, you got to play the young guys. If these guys are here and they're doing their job, play them. And maybe that's how you get Buck to do it. Maybe, maybe not. We know he's very, very veteran-oriented. He always gives the veterans the opportunity. But who's going to be the veterans he's going to play over the young kids if they're not available, right? I think, Stearns are going to, play his hand and say, listen, I'm going to put all these young kids here. And you got to play them because I'm not going to give you a lot of veterans except for the guys you're going to start already. If he's not going to have veteran bench players, Buck Showalter can only start who's available and who's on his roster. So I wonder how that's going to go. So let's put it together with the rotation and the lineup as a whole. David Stearns has a lot of work to do with the rotation and the bullpen, but to add to the lineup, with all the free agents, the possible trades, Hayden, I'm going to start with you. What do you think Stearns is going to do, and what is your opinion, or what do you think he's going to do when it comes to the rotation, bullpen, and lineup as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, going into this offseason, pitching. I mean, pitching wins championships. I mean, it's that important. The bullpen is a role that's very underrated in baseball. I mean, if we're only gonna have guys go 5, 6 innings, you saw big time this year how many games the bullpen blew. We'll get Diaz back, sure, but I mean, still, you're gonna need someone for the seventh, eighth, ninth. So build a bullpen. I'm done with Drew Smith. Done with Adam Ottavino. I'm done with these no names, Steven Nagosic type, Trevor Gott. No, you need a bullpen, major leaguers. So you need pitching. Like I said, you're going to have to help build another rotation, and internally and externally, of course. And lineup, like I said, you're definitely going to need to, obviously the 4 baby Mets are going to be a big part of next year, along with the other guys in this roster. But for me, it's going to be pitching. It's really going to be what David Stearns is going to have to examine.
Yeah. All right, Chris, what do you got about with that when it comes to the rotation, bullpen, lineup as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Caden's spot on. It's pitching. It's a kind of a blessing and a curse sort of situation that he is inheriting. He has Senga and Quintana, who've looked solid enough. Senga for sure, but Quintana's looked solid enough, right? To slot him in. Whether you want to have him as a 3 or 4, doesn't really matter. Yamamoto is a guy that everybody's in on. So obviously, we're gonna sit here until Yamamoto either signs to the Mets or anywhere else. Go get Yoshinobu Yamamoto. That's 100% a fact. The Shohei Ohtani situation really does change a lot of things now with his surgery. I saw a report MLB execs are still expecting the Mets to offer the highest offer sheet to Shohei. We'll see what his decision is in terms of West Coast versus East Coast baseball. Obviously, he won't be pitching in 2024, but you add that bat in terms of the lineup perspective right behind Pete Alonso, presumably, and you change the ball game. Or even if you want to slot him at the 3 spot, Alonso stays cleanup. You got Lindor right behind Alonso. I mean, there's so many ways that you can manipulate that middle part of the lineup with Nimmo and either McNeil or Marte at the top, presumably if they make it through the offseason. It's so many ways you can manipulate that with Ohtani on the roster. Obviously, we talked about Corbin Burns a lot. We like to think about that because of the Stearns connection, but really, are the Brewers going to help out the Mets in terms of the whole Stearns situation and trading their best pitcher to the New York Mets? I don't know if that's feasible. I don't know if that's going to happen. So, and the way the MLB is shaking out, anyways, is that you see the Tampa Bay Rays, an organization that has success. They haven't been able to pull together, but they've had a lot of success with guys in the early parts of their bullpen who carry them. Your long relievers and your beginning relievers, when your guys go 4 or 5 innings, right? They don't try to stretch most of the times, and what I've noticed out of the Rays, they don't try to stretch their guys 5, 6, 7 innings. If that happens, so be it, great. But they have enough depth and they have enough talent in the early parts of their bullpen to sort of make do with the starters going, only 4 or 5 innings. And that's something that I think the Mets, I think that's the way the MLB is trending in general, but I think the Mets can definitely take a note of and sort of invest in. The Josh Hader talk is something that has been a constant theme here. Nelson, you put up that tweet. Obviously, on my wish list, we did on Interstate. I said Josh Hader for sure. Like, if you were to give me a wish list of 5 guys right now, Josh Hader is definitely making my top 5. And I'm not ashamed to admit that, because I'm like, those 2 guys in the back end of your bullpen, however it shakes out, I get it. You don't want to move Edwin Diaz, but those 2 guys would just be electric in general, no matter who goes first, who goes second. But I really don't think on the tail end of that, to combat my sort of philosophy on the Josh Hader, a potential Josh Hader signing, is that you really do need to prioritize the early bullpen anyways. As good as those guys will be at the back end, you need to prioritize the front end. So I'm looking forward to it. David Stearns has a lot of options and a lot of routes he can take. You talk about a Dylan Cease. The White Sox are in flux. Obviously, it's going to take a lot to get him, but the Mets certainly, if any farm system has the assets to get a guy like Dylan Cease, it's definitely the Mets. You talk about a lower end guy like Mitch Keller from the Pittsburgh Pirates, also out there. Shane Bieber's name's been floating out there as well. So there's so many routes the Mets can go in terms of the rotation. Now the lineup, we've talked about Cody Bellinger. He's on that 1-year deal. What is he a fraud this year? I don't know. Nelson, I know you think he's a fraud. He's been killing it this year in Chicago. He's certainly a name that I know the Yankees are probably going to be on as well with that short porch, him being a lefty. Jorge Soler is going to opt out of his contract. If you want some power behind Alonso, if you strike out on Ohtani, these guys are all names to keep track of. So David Stearns has a lot of options. We'll see how much trading really goes on in the offseason. I think there's going to be a lot for the New York Mets. But I wouldn't rush if I was David Stearns, right? I wouldn't rush into trading our talent in year one. You can stash these guys for at least another year and then also wait until the trade deadline, right, to see where you're at in the 2024 season. So it's going to be interesting to see how he plays it. There's a lot of different routes he can take. And I think that to make these tough decisions, like I said, going back to David Stearns' topic, this is the right guy to do it. So that's my opinion on that.
Nelson, what do you got on all of that stuff?
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick because I know guys got to go. We already lost Hayden. Yeah, I mean, Yamamoto is my top target. Obviously, every team's going to be in on him, or most every team anyway. Some teams obviously just can't afford him. Other than him, I don't know. It's not the greatest. I mean, there's a lot of big names out there, but it's not guys I love. I don't love Nola. I don't trust Snell. Again, that to the Bellinger point, I don't trust guys that have sucked for a few years and then have these huge years on their contract year. That just scares me. Like I'm afraid to give money to those kind of guys. I could be wrong. I'm no, like, what do you call it? I'm no wizard. I don't know what's going on. Like I don't know. I can't tell the future. I'm not. But yeah. I mean, Yamamoto's definitely the number one guy. The other guy, I think Emoda from Japan would interest me as well. I'm all for signing as many Japanese pitchers as possible. But obviously we have a good top at the top of the rotation with Senga. We need somebody else, I think, to be that one. I would like to slide Senga down to that 2-hole.
Yeah.
Quintana's proven he looks pretty good as long as he can stay healthy. He's a solid piece for next year. We got young guys down in the minors that could potentially fight for that last spot. We got Vassell down there. Christian Scott's still in Double-A, but he's my favorite Mets pitching prospect. He's actually pitching tomorrow, so I'm excited to see him tomorrow firsthand. Blade Tidwell's down there as well. So we're going to have some guys pushing next year to come up at some point. It might not be first thing in the year, but at some point they're going to be pushing guys out. I don't want to see the McGills and the Petersons anymore. I know we might. They're under contract. It is what it is. But I hope we kind of move on from that. We've seen Lucchesi and Budo do decent, but I don't really want to rely on them for anything other than real like depth pieces. So we'll see what they end up doing with the rotation. I could definitely see some trades happening. Like you said with Bieber and guys like that. Burns, we'll see. Like I would agree with you. I don't think the Brewers are gonna like be jumping up and down to help us out. As far as the bullpen goes, listen, I would love Hader too, and I said it, but that's a lot of money to commit to the back end of the bullpen. Yeah. Again, if it means taking the job away from Diaz, that's a hell no on my part. I love the idea that Emezy put in there. I don't love Eloy Jimenez that much, but Luis Robert, if we could pry him from the White Sox, I'd be all over that for the lineup. But yeah, for the back end of the bullpen, an interesting name, Keith from Shea and Sons brought it up. And I love the guy. I see him firsthand out here in Western PA. David Bednar would be a lot cheaper option. He closes for the Pirates. He's very good. I think he'd be okay with being the setup guy for Diaz, and that would be a trade situation. Obviously, the Pirates have him under control. But if we could swing a deal for him, he's not going to cost a lot of money. Probably costs a decent prospect or two, but I like him a lot. We'll see. Building a bullpen's always tricky. these guys, they can have a great year and then turn around and have a horrible year. So we'll have to see what's out there. I do think a lot of trades are going to come. The lineup, again, who knows? Shohei, did we sign him? like Chris said, reports are we're going to try. That's an interesting situation too, because if we do sign him, obviously it's going to take a ton of money, but then he wants to pitch going forward. So he may not be an option to pitch next year, but you're going to have to leave a slot kind of open for him the following year, because he's going to slide into the rotation when he can pitch again. So that's an interesting thing to consider as well. If we do sign him, obviously that fixes our DH problem. You put him right in there behind Alonso, who's hopefully still here, and you cook with that for sure. Marte, can we rely on him for next year? I have no idea. I really don't think so, but we're kind of stuck with him with his contract. Then we got all these young kids to think about, Beatty, Mauricio, Vientos. So there's a lot to consider. Stearns is going to have a lot of work to do, but I trust him, and I think he'll get the job done.
Yeah, I agree with all of what you said. And nobody brought it up, but Eduardo Rodriguez, there was a report that came out from a reporter in Detroit saying that he wants to stay on the East Coast. He wants to be on the East Coast, and Detroit is kind of not East Coast enough for him in regards to his family. And he did veto a trade to the Dodgers because he wanted to stay on the East Coast. And the reporters spoke to him the other day, and Rodriguez says he is going to opt out of his contract. So that's a guy right there that can be an ace of a staff.
Yeah,
so he's a big option.
One more thing that we didn't bring up was that through this whole thing in terms of adding pitching is that the Mets are going to have to probably at some point next year, and even if they get Ohtani, right, if obviously, there's going to be a 6-man rotation at some point, especially if you sign Yamamoto. You have Kodai Senga year 2. Ohtani, if he's working his way back in 2025, if you have him, that's another 6-man rotation kind of thing to ease him back. So there's going to be a plethora of pitching, and Rodriguez is not going to sit there and make $14 million a year or $15 million a year, whatever his respective contract's going to be. He's going to opt out. So there's a plethora of pitching options via trade, via free agency. The lineup is a little bit more concerning in terms of how you fill that in. Obviously, it's going to be a lot of internal stuff with Jet Williams coming up, with Drew Gilbert, who's been killing it ever since coming over from Houston. But the David Stearns is a lot better set up in terms of addressing the pitching than he is the lineup, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it is one thing. Everybody's talking. We're talking about Tidwell, Scott, Vazel, all those guys. It's great, but we don't know exactly what the Mets think of these guys, right? Their opinion might be different. Again, David Stearns is just coming in, evaluating. I'm assuming he's been looking at these guys for a while, because I think Cohen's been talking to Stearns for a while about this position. What is the two things that everybody wants? Premium positions as prospects in trades and pitching, right? We'll really see how much the Mets believe in their young pitching prospects by who they sign pitching-wise for their rotation. Because if they sign 3 or 4 guys to fill this rotation, like Yamamoto, Eduardo Rodriguez, make a trade for a Dylan Cease or Corbin Burns, that's these are long-term deals. Where are you going to fit your young pitching staff, right? Pitching prospects, and that might be an option where, guess what? Now we're going to have to make a trade. Maybe we'll trade one of those guys if we're going to sign. So I think signing those guys, how many rotation guys we sign and how many years is a big tell of how much they believe in their pitching prospects. So we will see. And before we go, guys, we have to bring up Alonso contract. What do you think he deserves, and what do you think he'll get? Nelson, what do you got?
So hard to say what I don't know what he deserves. Who knows? I just know if 10 years is what he's looking for, I'm out on 10 years.
Me too.
I'm willing to go to like 8, which I'm begrudgingly willing to go to 8. I prefer a 6 or 7 year deal. I just know he's probably going to probably take 8 years, which I'm fine with. The money wise, I mean, 27, 28 mil a year, I could see that. I think it'll get done. If they're in the same page with the money, then I think the years will work themselves out. like Steven mentioned there, I could see option years and whatnot getting thrown in there, or opt outs or whatever, just to appease the situation. But I think it'll end up working itself out. We just need Stearns to get in here and get in on the conversations and hammer it out. Because anything at this point is not going to be an Epler call. So we just need the season to end and let Stearns take over and figure it all out.
Yeah, Chris, what do you think about an Alonso extension?
Yeah, I want to get it done. 8 years, for resetting the market, right? Becoming the highest paid first baseman, it takes $28 million a year. We know that with the Freeman contract. So you give him 8 for 28. You're sitting there for 8 years, $224 million in total. If you want a bargain, if you want to bargain with him, and just say, hey, listen, we love you. You can come back for 6 or 7 years. We'll give you the 30, couple extra $1 million AAV. But we can't sign you for that whole 8 or 9, whatever you're asking for. Maybe that's where you see some sort of bargain going through. I personally find it really hard to believe that Steve Cohen's going to want a penny pinch on a couple $1 million, especially with the contracts that he's already given out so far. So I don't think that's going to be the situation with Pete Alonso. But we'll see, man. I want to get it done. I think that he's a viable, just, in terms of building a contending roster. Obviously, it's going to take more than Pete Alonso, but he's going to be a viable part of this team moving forward. So I think it's done. I don't think Steve Cohen starts to penny pinch now. And I think we see it. I think $28 to $30 million is going to get it done. I get it. Pete Alonso is not better than Freddie Freeman.
No.
Matt Olson arguably had a better season than Pete Alonso this year. That's undoubtedly so, right? But when you talk about these contracts, right, like Matt Olson's getting paid, $21 million a year by the Braves. That's not realistic to even come at Pete Alonso with. So people have to stop comparing Matt Olson's numbers and metrics this season. You have a first baseman, right? The market is what it is. First basemans are getting paid what they are. It just so happened that a division rival cheated their star first baseman out of $5 to $6 million extra dollars a year. Stop comparing the two. It's not the same. It's not going to be the same. And if you look about it that way, then we'll never sign Pete Alonso. It's just not the same. So $28 to $30 million a year, get it done at this rate. Or Rob, like you said, if you want to let Pete Alonso walk, trade him, you get 2 guys to get you 25 homers apiece, maybe 20 homers apiece to replicate that 40 home runs in the lineup. You can go about it that way, but that's a little bit more riskier for
it is
than my liking. So I think Pete Alonso's a Met, and then just get it done, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And listen, guys, look, I think the Mets offered 7 years. I think that's their happy point. I think they would love 7 years. And again, they're on the same page financially. So the AAV, I'm assuming they agreed upon, is pretty close to what both of them want. So it's just the years. I think at the end of the day, it's going to end up being 8 years. I think the Mets want 7. Pete Alonso wants 10. They maybe do an 8-year with a mutual option for the 9th year or something like that. So with that said, guys, I appreciate everybody hanging out with us today. Roundtable is back and better than ever. Hayden, Nelson, Chris, hopefully everybody has a great night. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets. We'll see you next time, guys. Have a great night.
Let's go Mets. See ya.